Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from AnthonysCustoms, and for this review we are looking at the SH Figuarts Suicide Squad movie version of Harley Quinn. Now this is one of those figures where I don't know how I feel about it. I have to be very careful to not let my feelings about the movie affect my review for the figure. It does do a lot of things really well. It does a few things that bug me a little bit, but mostly it's a pretty good looking figure. So I have a feeling that if you're a fan of the movie, you might be interested in this figure, but we do have some things we need to talk about. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. This figure stands just about 5 3/4 inches tall, right around there, and that makes her just about 15 centimeters, just shy of that. And I have to say, at first glance, it's a very striking figure. It looks very nice because it has a lot of paint on it. You can see we have this sort of flat metallic for her vinyl jacket, which looks really nice. Then we have the very nice gold paint throughout this kind of stripe or band, which matches her belt. We have a flatter version of that gold throughout all of the details. And I have to say, the details on this figure are very well done. I'm assuming it was done with tampography, as most of these types of things are, and it's very clean. It looks great. All of the little details on the shirt are very nicely done. Even with the tattoos peeking through on her legs, that's pretty good. Her face, it is a little speckly, which is the case with this type of face paint. Hopefully they're able to work that out as they move forward in the future and as technology progresses, but it looks pretty good with the naked eye as long as you don't get too close. No complaints there. The paint job for the hair is fairly well done. It looks like kind of a half-assed dye job, which I guess is what it's supposed to be, so that's good. We do have some nice small details in the paint job on the hands with her rings, and I guess there's only one ring, huh? Well, that's okay. It looks good. And then, like I said, the belt is pretty clean, and the shoes, not too bad. Looks pretty good. So the paint job's good. As far as the sculpt goes, I don't know. The head sculpt is pretty accurate. I think in most cases it looks like her, so that's good. The jacket's sculpted well in terms of the wrinkles, and obviously it's not real cloth, but it looks really a lot like real cloth, so that's good. I will say, though, that the overall shape of her body, and now I know Margot Robbie isn't the most curvy person, but it's a little straight up and down. It doesn't quite have the right shape I think for the torso it's a little too wide, and it makes her look kind of chunky. And I'm guessing that's also because of the sculpt, the way the articulation works, but we'll talk about that as we go. It's not a perfect sculpt for her body, but I think it's good enough, especially once you pose her. It shouldn't really be a problem. One thing I want to touch on before we get on to the accessories, I was worried about her legs, because she's got these kind of like fishnet stockings on, and that's why her legs are a different color than her skin here. They're not actually painted. It's just the color is different overall. I think they would have done well to somehow do a very careful dry brush over the stockings to create the proper look, rather than just painting them a kind of a grayer version of her skin. But the shading that is on there does kind of catch the stockings in some places, so it's not anywhere near as bad as I thought, and it looks pretty good. Once you get her posed, you may not even notice that her entire leg is colored one color rather than the stockings on top. So it's really not as bad as I thought, and I think it'll be okay for most people. I also want to mention briefly that there is a lot of flat paint on here, which makes her look very nice. It's a higher quality looking figure because of that, especially in conjunction with the metallics and some various semi-glossy parts. Okay, let's talk accessories. 3 interchangeable heads. We have the one mostly neutral looking head, one where she's just kind of smirking, and then one where she's got her mouth wide open like she's laughing, and they all look pretty good. Again, a little speckly and not a perfect likeness, but I think it's definitely going to be good enough. In terms of hands, we have 2 sort of relaxed hands, one of which will be used for holding the baseball bat as like a secondary hand. We have 1 pistol gripping hand, 2 baseball bat gripping hands, and then 2 wide open hands, which would be just for like a style pose type of thing. And then of course we do have the pistol, which is very well detailed, and also the baseball bat, which looks pretty nice. So not a bad arrangement of accessories. If you do want to pose her with the pistol in her holster, it's actually connected to her jacket, which isn't terrible. I don't necessarily mind it. I'm not sure why they did that. I mean, they made the room in there for it in the first place, so they probably could have just connected it to the straps that are already sculpted onto her body. I think that would have been a little better. That way the jacket could open up without the holster being connected to it. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but it's something to mention. As far as the articulation goes, the ponytails are articulated, but the sculpt of them is such that it's a little bit limiting, and it's kind of a bummer for me. because not only are they sculpted to sit on the front of her shoulders down here at the bottom, so when you put them on the back, it's kind of problematic. They just kind of sit funny. It's a little weird. Not that big of a deal, just because it's hair and it could just be like windswept or something, so that's okay. But the ball peg that lets the hair move has very limited range. That is it. So it's mostly just a swivel. It would have been much nicer if it was a proper ball peg, so you could get a lot more range out of it, give her a little bit more of a dynamic pose, but you really can't. It's pretty limiting. It's kind of a bummer. For the head itself, we have a ball peg for the top of the neck and another ball peg for the bottom of the neck, so it'll move around pretty well. It's just that the hair will get in the way, so you have to be conscientious of that as you're posing her, and then you can probably, once you get the head in place, move the hair back down to where you want it. So it's a little bit of a bummer. You know, in fact, I think it's a double ball peg at the top and at the bottom. Let's pull it off and check. Yeah, double ball peg at the top. And maybe, yeah, it's probably a single one at the bottom. And this is a separate piece, so you can hide the joint with that. So that's pretty cool. You know, it's not the most range you'll ever get, but it looks nice. So you do give them some credit for that. It does have decent range. That's okay. For the shoulders, we have a butterfly joint, which you can actually see the hinge for up front right there. So it's a true original style butterfly joint, which doesn't come that far forward on this side due to the jacket fitting the holster. On this side, it's a little bit better. It doesn't actually grant that much range, but it's worth noting, and people always freak out about, oh, it needs a really good butterfly joint. Humans can't bring their arms that far across their chest, from the shoulder anyway. It's all that happens at the elbow, really. So it's not actually too bad that it doesn't go that far. It's fairly realistic, so I'm okay with that. Then the shoulder ball hinge actually connects on a ball peg to that butterfly joint, which gives her pretty good range there. And then you have the actual ball hinge, which does give her the rest of the range. So I'm pretty happy with that. You have your bicep swivel, which is pretty limited. That's a bit of a bummer. I wish they could have incorporated a better bicep swivel. It's very, very limiting. For the elbows, we have this single hinge, and it looks okay when the arms are straight. Halfway bent, it looks kind of weird. And then when it's fully bent, it looks fine. So it's a little bit, I don't know how I feel about that. Most figures don't use this kind of non-symmetrical joint. I think the balls, even though they stick out a little bit when you use them, they might look better. I don't know. That's kind of a personal preference. It's very functional, and it looks good when it's bent, so objectively, I'm kind of neutral on it, but it's functional, so that's good. For the wrists, we have a little tiny ball hinge, so you should have no problem posing them. They have decent range built in, so that's good. Be aware, though, that the little peg that holds the hands, it's often offset for the hands themselves, and it's a very tiny peg, and it's fairly stiff, so be careful with that. For the torso, we have a joint here at the upper torso. It feels like well, let's just look. I guess it pops off pretty easily. I was going to say it feels like a double ball peg, and it is. But you're not going to get that much range out of it, or at least I haven't had much luck, but maybe now that it's popped off, it'll be, yeah, it's actually a little better now. So you get decent range out of that. You just have to be aware of the jacket as you're posing her. So that's pretty cool. I like that. For the lower torso, are we just going to pop that off too? No, it doesn't want to go. It might be a double, could be a single, can't really say. That's off again. Okay. It doesn't have that much range due to the sculpt. It's mostly just going to lean forward a little bit and then lean back a little bit. You don't get that much. And it's also worth noting that the red from the jacket has actually rubbed off onto the shirt, which you probably won't notice too much normally, but it's there, so I'll point it out. It can lean side to side a little bit, almost no rotation. So with both joints put together, you get just a little bit of rotation out of her. Very, very minimal. Kind of a bummer. Probably okay, though, since she's not going to be in the most dynamic of poses. Well, you know, she is a gymnast, so she should be able to move, and she's not that mobile. Anyway, let's move on. The crotch piece is a floating piece. It's fairly soft plastic. You can bring the legs pretty far forward. It does rotate them just the tiniest bit, but it's not even that noticeable, so that's okay. And you do get a big hole in her butt. No pun intended there. But you can't really avoid that type of thing. That's the way it goes. I will say, though, the figure has a particularly plump posterior compared to the actress, but I imagine most people won't mind that too much. As far as going out to the side, the hips do have an acceptable amount. Not quite as mobile as most people would probably have liked, like I said, given that she's supposed to be particularly flexible, but it's good enough. As far as the thigh swivel goes, it's in there. It's mostly just on the ball peg, or the socket that holds the ball peg. You can rotate around that, so it's okay. For the knees, not the best range in the knees. It's not that much better than 90. It'll do, but it's not especially good. And then for the ankles, we have kind of an offset ball hinge. So you can bring the foot forward a little bit. Doesn't really go back very far at all. And you can rotate it around to give yourself an ankle rocker. It's just going to take a little bit of force. Well, that one doesn't want to do it. Let's see if I can do it. I did it on this one, on this side. Yeah. Huh, that's weird. Well, I'm able to do it on this side, so I'm assuming that one can. Maybe it's just stuck right now. But you do get the ankle rocker out of that. And it's weird. This side seems to have better range than the other side. But pretty good range on that foot. Let's see if we can get this one to go. Huh. Doesn't really want to do it. I don't know. I don't know. It looks like her right ankle is not as good as her left. That's a little strange. So ultimately, I do like the figure. I think aesthetically it's very pleasing, short of her maybe somewhat less than desirable torso sculpt. She's still pretty well designed, fairly accurate to the actress, and like I said, lots of nice paint on there. So overall, I'm very pleased with it. Maybe not my most favorite figure in the world, but it's pretty good overall. So that's my final verdict. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you turn on notifications and come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.